All right, so I'm going to go over this test review part 2 with you guys in video form so that you guys can reference it if you need any help with it or if you're trying to study a little bit extra on the test. So when you look at this first question, it says find the measure of angle n, okay? And what you'll notice is that we have a parallelogram. Now, granted, they don't give us any information about angle n, but what we do have information about is angle k and m. And one of the things you guys have to remember is that when you have opposite angles in a parallelogram, so opposite angles in a parallelogram, those opposite angles are congruent. Okay? So if these two are congruent, essentially what you can do is you can set them equal to each other and solve for x. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have 8x plus 17 is equal to 12x minus 39. Okay? So from here, I'm just going to go ahead and, subtract my 8x from both sides. Just do my basic algebra here, which, you guys know by now that I don't really like to spend too much time on that. So then this becomes 56 on this side is equal to 4x. So now in order to get x by itself, I divide by 4. And I get x is equal to 56 divided by 4 is 14. All right. Now, granted, they're not asking for the value of x. What are they asking for? They're asking for the measure of angle n. So the thing is, we don't know what the measure of angle n is, but we can figure out what one of these are. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in 14 into one of these, and I'll probably plug it into k. So if I plug in 14 into k, I have 8 times 14 plus 17. And let me take out my calculator here. So I have 8 times 14 plus 17. So we know that angle K is equal to 129 degrees. Now, the other thing you guys have to remember with parallelograms is that when you have angles that are consecutive, let me write that down. Consecutive angles are supplementary. Okay, so if I have consecutive angles are supplementary, I essentially can go ahead and say, okay, well, these two angles are going to add up to 180. So if I want to know the measure of angle n is just going to be 180 minus 129. And when I subtract those out, I end up with 51 degrees. Okay, so that's the answer for number 1. All right, let's look at number 2. Again, more things that we have to remember about parallelograms. You'll notice we have consecutive angles right there, angles that are right next to each other. And just like what I said earlier, consecutive angles side by side are supplementary. So this one, I'm going to set up the equation a little bit differently, because if I have consecutive angles and they're supplementary, these two are going to add together and equal 180 degrees, right? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and put 5x minus 6. I'm going to add that with the next one, 14x minus 4, and then that's going to be equal to 180 degrees. And now it's just a matter of solving for x. So 5x plus 14x is 19x, minus 6 minus 4 is minus 10 equals 180. And I'm just going to add the 10 to both sides. 19x is equal to 190. And then when I divide by 19 on both sides, I get x is equal to 10. Now, granted, they're not asking for x in this problem. What they're asking for is angle r, which is right over here. And here's the thing. We know information about these two, but nothing about angle r. But again, with parallelograms, you also have to remember that opposite angles, kind of like what we said over here, if the angles are opposite of each other or across from each other, right, like over here, those are congruent. So really, if we can figure out what the measure of angle t is, we will automatically know what the measure of angle r is. So I'm going to go ahead and write it out like this. Angle r is equal to angle t, which is equal to, and I know that t is 14x minus 4. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and plug in 10 into this. So that'll be 14 times 10 minus 4. Okay? And then 14 times 10 minus 4 will be 140 minus 4, which is 136 degrees. Okay? So that's the first two problems. The next problem is number 3. It says in parallelogram ABCD, if ED is equal to 7x minus 13 and BD is equal to 16x minus 38. Find BD. So this one's a little bit tricky because what they do is they give you the value of ED, right? So ED is equal to 7x minus 13. But they say that the whole thing of BD, this entire length is 16x minus 38. Okay? Well, with this problem, let's see. The one property we have to remember about parallelograms is that diagonals bisect each other. Again, notice how I'm writing out all of these properties. I probably could have written that opposite angles are congruent. All right. So many rules with parallelograms, but none of the rules are like particularly hard. So we know that diagonals bisect each other. So essentially, this diagonal over here is cutting this one in half, right? So right here we have two equal halves that equal the whole thing. All right. So essentially, when I think about the value of BD, so I have 16x minus 38, isn't that equal to double whatever this one is? Because if I have 7x minus 13 as ED, then I can pretty much like copy and paste this 2 times because this is the same as that side, but that's equal to the whole thing. So I'm going to say that 16x minus 38 is equal to double whatever 7x minus 13 is. And now that's just some basic algebra, right? So I'm going to go ahead and distribute my 2. I have 16x minus 38 is equal to 14x minus 26. And then I just, let me subtract 14x on both sides. I'm running out of space here. Let's see if I can make this work. Plus 38, plus 38. So now I have, let's see, 2x on this side because those cancel. And then 38 minus 26 is equal to 12. So then if I divide both sides by 2, I get x equals 6. Okay. Now, again, they're not asking for, in all of these problems, I'm almost never asking for x. I'm asking for something other than that. So then with x equals 6, I can go ahead and plug that into, they said that BD was 16x minus 38. I'll plug in 6 into that. So 16 times 6 minus 38. Let me quickly do that. 16 times 6 minus 38 gives us, so BD is equal to 58. All right. So that's how you do number 3. Oh, now for number 4. Here we have a very weird figure, right? If we look at that, I say I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sides, right? So here's the thing. If you have nothing but interior angles, right, in a multi-sided polygon, you have to remember, well, sure, you can use that formula 180 times n minus 2, right? Or what I like to think about instead is if I have 3 sides, it's 180. If I have 4 sides, it's 360. If I have 5 sides, let's add another 180. So, and it goes up by a pattern of 180 every single time, right? So let's add 180. So that's 5 sides is 540. 6 sides is 720. 7 sides is 900. And then 8 sides is 1080. Sorry, someone's at the door. Okay, so sorry about that. I had a little break there. But anyway, so we know that an 8-sided figure, the sum of all of the interior angles is going to be 1080. So what I'm going to do is I can get all of these angles, add them up, add up all of these angles. All right, and this is a lot to work with, but I'm going to add up all of these angles and set it equal to 1080. So I'm going to be strategic about this. Let me go ahead and instead of writing it all out as like one big equation, I'm just going to combine my like terms before I create my equation. So what I'll do is I'm going to combine all of my x terms. So I have 10x. So 10x I'm going to take care of. I have 9x. So plus, I don't know why I'm writing it. I'm just going to say 10x, 9x, 7x, 9x, and 8x. So let's start off with that. So 10 plus 9 plus 7 plus 9 again, plus 8. So I have 43x if I combined all of my x values. Okay? Then I'm going to combine all of my numbers. I have 139, I have negative 11, 121, negative 17, positive 6, 53, positive. I'm going to start with a positive number so that I start off my calculator with that. So I have 139 minus 11 plus 121 minus 17 plus 6 plus 153 minus 14. Is that a minus 15? Yeah, minus 15. So that's going to be 362. And all of that should be equal to 1080. All right, 1 second. Sorry, I made a mistake. So that's supposed to be plus 15. So if you add, I added 15 twice to get 392. So this is 392. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and subtract 392 from both sides. And I have 43x is equal to 688. And then hopefully this gives me the right answer. So then x is equal to 16. All right. So just especially when you have like a big cluster of like values there in the for angles, just combine the like terms right off the bat, and you don't have to worry about it. All right. So let's look at number 5. It says if PQRS is a rectangle. So now we have a rectangle here. All right. It's like a parallelogram, but there are some specific properties about it. If PQRS is a rectangle and PR, so this entire PR is 9x plus 1, and QS, this entire QS, is 13x minus 11. All right. So one thing you have to remember with a rectangle, something that'll be helpful with, and this is true for, that's not true for parallelograms, it's only true for rectangles and squares, is that for a rectangle, diagonals are congruent. So in other words, what I can do is I can get this diagonal and set it equal to that diagonal. So I have 9x plus 1 is equal to 13x minus 11. So when I go ahead and work this out, I subtract 9x from both sides. I'm going to add 11 to both sides. So I have 12 is equal to 4x. And then when I divide it by 4, I get x is equal to 3. Okay, well, that's nice. Well, the thing is, they're not asking for x, they're asking for TR, right? Now, the thing is, I don't know what TR is. TR is only this portion right there. But I know that the whole thing is 9x plus 1. So let me figure out what the whole thing is first. I know that PR is going to be equal to 9 times 3 plus 1. So that's 27 plus 1 is 28. But the thing is, isn't TR, and remember what we said before, this is true for all parallelograms, the diagonals bisect each other. So isn't TR half of the whole thing? So if the whole thing is 28, then that means that TR is equal to 14. And that is the answer. Okay, let's move on to the next one. I don't want to make this video too long. So it says over here, if STUV is a rhombus, find the measure of angle SVU. So here we want to know that S, V, and U. Okay, now I know I went over this yesterday or in the previous worksheet, but what you have to remember about a rhombus is that diagonals bisect opposite angles. Okay, so essentially what's happening here is that this diagonal is cutting this angle and this angle into 2 equal halves. So in other words, this angle that you see right there is exactly the same as that angle that you see right there. Okay, so what I can do is if I have like algebraic expressions for those 2 angles, I'm going to go ahead and get these 2 and set them equal to each other. I'm going to have 9x minus 43, and I'm going to set that equal to 5x plus 1. All right, so I'm going to work this out. Let's subtract 5x on both sides. I'm going to add 43 to both sides. And so let's see, I have 4x is equal to 44. Divide both sides by 4, and I get x is equal to 11. Okay, well, we're not really done there, right? What we got to do is now we got to get x equals 11 and plug it into one of these two. I'll plug it into this one. This one looks like it's easier. If I do 5 times 11 plus 1, 55 plus 1 is 56. So that means that both, and remember, this angle is the same thing. That means that both of these angles are 56, which means that the whole thing, if I added 56 together, or 56 times 2, that means that this entire angle is 112 degrees. All right? So, and what they're asking for is the opposite angle. And didn't we establish earlier that opposite angles are congruent? So if I know that this entire angle is 112 degrees, and that means that angle SVU is also 112 degrees. All right? And that's what's going to happen a lot with the FSA. What they're going to do is they're going to make sure that you do all the work for one area of the parallelogram, but you have to know the properties of all parallelograms to answer other parts of the parallelogram. I feel like I kind of jumbled my words there, but I think that should make sense, hopefully. All right. Now for number 7. It says find the measure of angle M. So angle M is all the way out here. But I guess in order to figure this out, we got to figure out what these two angles are first, right? So what you notice here is you have an isosceles trapezoid, right? Here you have an isosceles trapezoid because you have the two slanted sides are the same, right? So when we have an isosceles trapezoid, what you have to remember is that the base angles, like angle J, is equal to angle K. And angle M is pretty much the same value as angle L. So if I know that these two angles are the same, well, let's do what we've been doing pretty much this whole time, set them equal to each other. Anyways, sorry about that. So then, obviously, I'm recording this during class. So I have 8x minus 23 is equal to 6x plus 11. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and move the 6x to this side. I'm going to add 23 to the other side. So then as those cancel, so then I have 2x is equal to 34. No, 34. 34. Divide both sides by 2. And then I get x is equal to 17. Okay. So now I can get this 17, and I'm going to plug that into J and see what happens. So I know that angle J is equal to 8 times 17 minus 23, and I'm not even going to bother doing that in my head. 8 times 17 minus 23 gives us 113. Now, granted, that's not what they're asking for. They're asking for the measure of angle M. So the other property you have to remember is that the two angles along this diagonal, so along a vertical diagonal, are going to be supplementary.
You could,
Yeah. So then, if these two are going to be supplementary, then that means that angle M and angle J together have to equal 180, right? So that means that angle M is going to be 180 minus angle J. So 180 minus 113 gives us 67 degrees, right? So that's 67 degrees. All right, so now if I look at number 8, okay, so again, you have to remember all of these properties about trapezoid. You have to remember base angles are the same. The angles along the diagonal add up to 180. All right, let's look at number 8. This is a big one, and I'm definitely going to make sure I put a couple of questions like this on the test tomorrow. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at these two, and I'm going to say, okay, well, one thing you have to remember, if you ever have a mid-segment, this is what we call a mid-segment, okay? If I add the top and the bottom segments together, all right, the top and the bottom together, both of those are going to add together to become double whatever the mid segment is. Let me say that again. The top segment plus the bottom segment is equal to double the mid segment. All right. So we can set up our equation there. I'm going to do 2x plus 7 plus, and by the way, this is supposed to say 19.
Oh.
My bad. So it's 19. So it's 2x plus 7 plus 19 is equal to double the middle. So I'm going to do 2 times whatever the middle value is. And please don't forget to put parentheses, because then you might accidentally forget to distribute the number. So we have 2x, and then 7 plus 19 is plus 26, is equal to 2 times 5x is 10x plus 2. And then let's see, I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. So now I have 24 is equal to 8x. Divide both sides by 8, and I get x is equal to 3. Okay? And so now from here, I can go ahead. What are they asking for? Y. They're asking for yz. So yz is equal to 5 times 3 plus 1. And finally, we get 16. All right. So hopefully this was helpful. And if you have any questions, you can always send me a message on Remind. That's the best way of getting in contact with me. I never check my Canvas messages. So, because I still got to get used to Canvas. But anyways, it's all there. No excuses for not knowing how to be ready for the test tomorrow. Rewatch this video 50 times if you have to. All right. Good luck. And you're going to rock it tomorrow.